So now the next scenario is, can you guess? Well, it's basically negative coefficient. What? Yes, negative coefficient. So we have a coefficient, and I said you can have negative coefficients, but how do you solve equations with negative coefficients? Now that's the question I'm going to answer with this scenario for both equation and equality. So we have negative 4x plus 20 equals 36. So, of course, you see that this area is the same. Leave this alone. Since this is always the second step, let's start with this step, right? Which is 2. Since we have a plus here, we have to get rid of the 20, right? So we have to subtract 20 on both sides, right? Not add. So we can go here and we can just say minus 20 equal to minus 20. And you can go here saying that negative 4x equal to, what is 36 minus 20? 16. Very good. So now we have to use negative 4 equals 16, negative 4x equals 16, and calculate. So you see here, everything is so similar. It's just that that one negative is the thing that's doing the job. Well, let me tell you, the real joke here is that there's nothing different with equations. If you know how to divide with negative numbers, that's all you need to worry about. Just have to do whatever you did with the positive coefficient, except you will end up with a negative number if this is a positive. If this is also a negative, you'll end up with a positive number. But since this is a positive number, you'll end up with a negative. So do the same thing you did. Easy peasy. Do the slash divided by negative 4, right? So it's divided by negative 4. Then we have to divide it by negative 4. So when you divide it by negative 4 on both sides, what do we get? X is equal to 16 divided by negative 4 is negative 4. So you'll end up with a negative number, but you didn't do anything else but divide it with negative 4. But in inequalities, which I'm warning you about, is that there is going to be a change. So you got it with x is equals minus 4, of course. Substitute, which I'm not going to really go through. Just have to do it. Substitute. Get negative 4. Negative 4 times negative 4 is 16 because the negatives cancel out, and you get 4 times 4 is 16. 16 plus 20 is 36, so that's it. Works. Got it? Now, let me do a similar question, except on inequalities. Alright, so I have an inequality over here, which is minus 5y minus 16 is less than, right, because it's the mouth is facing to this other side, is less than 29. So this expression minus 5y minus 16 has to be less than 29. So I told you, I warned you that it's going to change, but the sign will change, not the numbers. So we have to do everything same till we get to minus 5y is less than 29. Then I'll tell you what to do. So now we have to get rid of the minus 16. Since it's minus 16, we have to get to the positive, it's 0. So we have to add 16 on both sides. So we can just go like this, add 16. Add 16. And then we'll get y. Say minus 5y is equal to, or sorry, is less than 29 plus 16 is 45. So we have 45 here. And of course, one more thing I'm telling you is if when you add it up or subtract, when you're in your last step, when you're dividing by the coefficient or whatever you get, if you get a non-integer or number, if you get like a rational, like if you get like a fraction or a decimal, that's totally fine. You just have to make sure that when you replace that decimal or fraction with your unknown variable here, it should basically equate the same. So there, I think you can use a calculator or you can just use your brain, I guess. I don't know. But I'm just telling you. If that scenario comes, which I'm not really going to go through, I will go through fraction one, but don't worry. Minus 5y is less than 45. So now, basically, as you know that in the equation part, we have to divide it. That's always there. To divide it, don't worry. But I said the sign will change. How will the sign change? Because when we divide by, let's just divide by -5 and do that first. Okay, we get y is, I'm going to leave this blank, -9. Use this to keep that. So let's keep this with the thing first, just for the sake of keeping it with the thing. So now we say y is less than -9. Now, we just have to see that there's something, which I'm going to tell you here, that y is -9. So let me tell you one thing, that if you ever have, and let me write this down so for you, if you ever have a negative coefficient, you have to switch the sign. If you ever have a negative coefficient, right, we have this in the negative coefficient in the situation, you have to switch the sign. So here it's a less than sign. You have to switch it to a greater than sign. So I'll switch it and I'll tell you why. 1 second. Switch. Why? Because when you have a negative coefficient, but when you divide by -5, your coefficient or your variable becomes positive. So when the sign changes at inequalities from negative to positive, your sign also switches. Whether the constant here is not negative or positive, doesn't matter. It's basically because of this. Since it was a negative and then it became a positive, right? The sign changed, so the inequality sign will also change. And I'll tell you when we're substituting later, but you should already be visualizing. When I show you the substitution, you'll know why. So then we know that we switched the sign because of the sign change. Y is greater than -9. So we know that it's greater than -9 now. So again, like usual, we have to now we have to do something smart, which is none other than substitution. So now that we find that here, we have to have y which is greater than -9. Remember, this is a negative number, so it should be a -8 and above, and not -9 or lower. So -8, but let me take -7, okay? So if we take -7, now let's replace it. Gets us to -5 times -7. The negatives cancel out. 5 times 35. So now we have, if we take this out, we have 35 minus 16. Thus 19. Is that less than 29? Yeah. Well, remember, the sign doesn't change in the main problem. Main problem stays the same, so it's still less than, just for the answer. So yes, it works. So we know that we have to switch the sign. That's the part about this. That's the twist about this part.